Welcome back to the program. We are joined today by Professor Jeffrey Sachs. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, always great to be with you, Glenn. Thank you.
So you just attended the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, and while the UN created to preserve the peace does not appear to be doing too well as the world is heading toward a very dangerous place. So over the past few days, I've been watching some very strange speeches, many packed with a lot of obvious lies. I heard the threat of war, a strange bromance between the former director of the CIA and a former Al-Qaeda leader who now leads Syria. But I thought a good place to start could be Europe, because there seems to be an eagerness now to escalate tensions with Russia, likely for the purpose of pulling the US deeper into the war. And there was a great excitement as Trump said that Russia was a paper tiger, Ukraine can win, it can even take Russian territory, and the Europeans should start shooting down Russian jets. Now, of course, this excitement appears to have been replaced with some panic, as Trump then suggested that the Europeans should take care of all of the above. But what do you make of all of this in terms of the direction of the Europeans, especially? And yeah, where's this all heading?
Well, first, what Trump did this past week has been given two very different interpretations. Honestly, I'm not sure which is right. Either of them shows a failure of leadership and an irresponsibility. One interpretation is that Trump expressed a new view that, yes, as he's been advised by General Kellogg and other hardliners in the United States and by Zelensky and others, that Ukraine can win, that Russia is being defeated, that the Russian economy is in crisis. These are the things that he said. Normally, when a leader says something so straightforwardly, that's the first interpretation that comes to mind, is that that's a view that he's expressing. The other approach to this, which is the one you also alluded to, is that it's the opposite. In fact, that this was simply a smokescreen of Trump saying to the Europeans, you keep telling me you want to fight, you keep telling me that Russia is winning. Okay, great. Go at it. It's all yours. Just buy my weapons. So these are two different interpretations. I went with the first originally, listening to Trump and hearing his views, and also having the strange and unpleasant experience of standing in the General Assembly hall and seeing General Kellogg mingling among the various delegations. That I found to be rather unpleasant because I don't understand what a hardline American general is doing in the UN General Assembly other than stirring up trouble by the United States. But the second interpretation was the one actually given by many of the European leaders, or at least the media that purport to represent their views. That what Trump really said was, if you want to fight, go ahead. It's all yours. Just buy my weapons. Now, either way, we have a colossal failure of leadership and growing confusion, and definitely growing risks of escalation, either deliberate or accidental. What Trump has never done from the beginning of this term is to explain anything to the American people or to the world about the U.S. position vis-a-vis this war in straightforward terms. For example, the most basic question, on what basis can this war be ended? The United States puts forward no positions. The European leaders put forward no positions other than saying Ukraine will determine that, which is an extraordinary idea, essentially saying we will do anything Ukraine says, whether it's in our interest or not, whether it makes sense or not. And of course, when I say what Ukraine says, I mean what one person says, Zelensky, who is at this point a dictator, in effect. He's ruling by martial law, and that is going to determine what Europe and the Western world do. So, to my mind, the great failure of this is that while President Putin has put on the table a very clear set of conditions for peace, he's described them as Ukraine's neutrality and the transfer of specific territories to Russia at the as part of the peace agreement. The other side has said either nothing, or it's said no concessions of any kind, and Ukraine will remain in NATO, which is tantamount to saying, first, no negotiations. Second, the war will continue despite the massive destruction, the bloodshed, the demographic catastrophe facing Ukraine. So all of what I'm saying, Glenn, is that this past week was at best unedifying, and at worst, depending on the interpretation, a dramatic escalation that could lead to a direct war between at least Europe and Russia, if not NATO and Russia, in a direct sense of direct clashes and fighting outside of Ukraine into Europe and so on. The European leaders are absolutely without any honest, public-facing discussion of these risks right now. We don't hear anything from the triumvirate, Starmer, Macron, and Merz about the risks of World War III, about nuclear war, about the European Union and the UK becoming a battlefield. In fact, none of this is articulated. No choices are stated. No discussion is made. Of course, there is not one moment of truth expressed about the history of the conflict, how it arose, why it arose, how it could be diffused. Not one single word. And this past week at the UN was all the more shocking for this. Trump's speech was an incoherent rant of lies from beginning to end on every possible range of issues, by the way. The discussion, this supposed turnabout by Trump, also unexplained. The puerile insulting of Russia as a paper tiger and so on, walked back after the fact, was absolutely against the service of peace or any kind of solution. In other words, this was a week devoid of grown-up behavior, of responsibility, of any movement towards peace. And we're just talking about Ukraine, because we could talk in the same way about Netanyahu and the war in the Middle East. Every single thing that I've just said applies to Netanyahu's vile and loathsome address that he gave to the General Assembly, which was an address of hate and continued war. So not a good week for diplomacy.
I was thinking that all of the recent dubious claims about Russian infringement of NATO airspace with jets and drones, which they deny, and no evidence has been provided. We also see the accusation now, or not the accusation, but the threat of using now long-range missiles without any limitations against Russia, again, calling for shooting down Russian jets. At the end of the day, irrespective of what Trump's motivations might be or some clever scheme, the Russians, must respond to this in some way. It seems to me that the whole premise that Russia would not respond and accept the idea that this is not that this is simply NATO helping Ukraine defend itself, it ignores, as you suggest, that NATO backed the coup to begin with, that they largely hijacked the intelligence services, the army, and the government in Ukraine. And again, these are NATO weapons, so we're talking about NATO now attacking Russia. You speak with these European leaders. You meet them now at the United Nations. Are they committed or convinced that they're just there to help a country that was invaded without any provocations, or do they, I guess, recognize, as many of the leaders have already done, that this is a proxy war?
The leaders don't engage in real discussion. They do not debate this in public. They don't express their views. And okay, with me, they don't have to, but they don't take on any kind of discussion. One just walked away when I started to make these points. We had an exchange of pleasantries. I expressed the worry about the direction, and I was told that I was barking up the wrong tree. This is not the way that one should behave to keep this world safe. I think what's most worrying for me is the ever-present fear that I have that some accident is going to quickly spiral out of control. What we have are two sides that are, well, especially I would say the Western side, yelling hatred towards Russia, an absolutely astounding, vulgar, crass Russophobia. And I call it that because it's not an attempt at an analytical explanation of what's happening. It's completely dishonest from a historical point of view. It glosses over every single fact that led us to this war, but it's hate speech non-stop. And Trump participated in that. And it is with all the claims of these provocations and all the rest, and the open discussion this week about shooting down Russian planes, the kind of blind rage that can lead to an event, that leads to another event, that leads to another event, with these this hatred and this vituperation already stoked. And then because these leaders are able to command missile systems, they don't need to ask their publics for approval, of which the publics absolutely do not approve of what is happening right now. A devastating war could soon befall us. And if this seems just, kind of being afraid of the rhetoric and so forth, how many wars start with an incident, with an insult, with an accidental or false flag event that triggers a spiral rapidly of escalation? A large number. World War I, the war that destroyed every hope for peace for the next century in its way, started, of course, with an assassination by some young kids of the Archduke of the Habsburg Empire. But one can name countless such cases. And this is what we are walking along in this abyss. We're right at the edge of terrible accidents happening without diplomacy, without honesty, without reflection, without maturity, without consistency, without guardrails. And we continue to come closer and closer to the edge.
I think that the greatest threat at the moment is the assumption or delusion of escalation control, that we can continue to escalate rhetoric, actions, but still be able to bring it down when we want to. I think this miscalculation is just a disaster waiting to happen. And we see now that the Russian Oreshnik missiles are heading to Belarus because, again, they see this as a real threat. But I did want to shift a bit towards the Middle East, because you had the opportunity there at the UN to speak with the Iranian president. How are they assessing the information, well, the situation? Because it does seem, at least from my viewpoint, that we might be heading towards yet another war with Iran, but this time it will probably play out very differently and take on a whole new level of violence. I'm I'm hoping I'm just a very pessimistic human being, but what were your impressions from this meeting with Iran's president?
Well, I met this year in a group again with President Pezeshkian, as I had last year, and on both occasions, the president spoke eloquently for peace. And he spoke as a medical doctor, as a surgeon, as a healer, and as someone who was looking for diplomacy and for peace. And it's not only extraordinarily measured, but extraordinarily pacific in the rhetoric. No threats. Actually, one felt very sad because one knew, and I felt as I was listening to him, that we can hear the hatred coming from Israel. We heard it from Netanyahu, and I think a very high likelihood that Israel will try to attack again to bring down the Iranian government. But there was no growling by the Iranian side saying, if they do this and that, or it was all a talk about the need for a peaceful way out. Yet, unfortunately, in our world right now, if you talk in that way, the other side, which is filled with loathing, detects weakness. And I think that what we heard from Netanyahu was very clear. In his demented mind, and he's really, in my view, an extraordinarily, perhaps the most extraordinarily dangerous person on the whole planet. In his mind, all evil goes back to Iran. Iran must be defeated. He said this absolutely clearly. He talked about the new day that's going to come in Iran. It all seemed to me to be a prelude to another war and another attack, I should say, because in one way or another, the war has gone on endlessly. And Netanyahu was delighted to recount all of the assassinations that Israel has carried out, all of the decapitation of the Iranian government and others, all of the murders of negotiators with Israel, because Netanyahu's style is if the other side is negotiating, you kill the negotiator because you're trying to kill the negotiations themselves, because you're trying to conquer. You're not trying to solve a problem or find a peaceful agreement. You're trying to conquer. And that's basically what Netanyahu said, and what Pezeshkian said was the opposite of that. This is one of the tragedies that we've seen in this world actually for decades, but we can see it visibly in full view for the last decade, that Iran has said repeatedly, we want to negotiate, and every time Iran negotiates, it gets hammered. The first time was negotiating a comprehensive plan of action, the JCPOA, which not only was negotiated by then President Barack Obama and the others with Iran, but it went into effect, and then Trump came in and ripped up the agreement and ripped up the basis for a negotiated settlement. The United States and Israel then continued to attack Iran one way or another. Israel launching attacks on Iran and making assassinations of Iranian leaders. When Trump came in this time, he said, we're going to negotiate. And there were 5 rounds of discussion, with both sides reporting positive progress. And then just before the 6th round, Israel and the United States attacked Iran. Well, this is Netanyahu's strategy for the last 30 years. Bring the United States into a widening war in the Middle East to be culminated with the overthrow of the Iranian government. And Netanyahu is still trying. He could not have been more clear at the United Nations, a speech filled with hate and lies and warmongering.
Well, it just seems that these endless wars we have, they don't only take their lives, infrastructure and prosperity, but in these efforts that something always have to be justified, something that shouldn't be justified, one gets the feeling it, drains the almost soul of a nation and the people. And I got this almost hopeless feeling when I watched Petraeus and Jolani sit on stage and just, gushing over each other, how they were on different sides, but now they found, peace. And of course, my main concern is what is the purpose of this partnership? Do you see? I guess they're not done with Syria just yet. What was your takeaway from this exchange? Because for me, this was, extraordinary to watch. I know the CIA and the different Syrian jihadist groups have worked very close, but still, the efforts to whitewash this all and make it into a respectable partner for unknown purposes going forward. I don't know. What was your takeaway?
Netanyahu also explained this, that we have a wonderful friend next door in Syria now, and I expect that we're going to make peace soon. Well, it's very simple. In 2011, and Petraeus was very much there and involved, the Obama administration decided to overthrow the government of Bashar al-Assad. This was done at the behest of Netanyahu. This is one of Netanyahu's many wars in which he uses the United States, uses the U.S. government, the U.S. military, the U.S. taxpayer to fight his wars. Let me just say before I get back to Syria, what is Netanyahu's intention? That Israel dominates the Middle East in power, in effective hegemony, but that it completely dominates Palestine, that basically the Palestinians are written out of history, even mass slaughtered or ethnically cleansed from Palestine. So what Netanyahu has said since 1996 is that there will never be a state of Palestine. This is what he reiterated at the UN. And we will overthrow any government that opposes us in our domination of all of Palestine. It's mind-boggling in its brutality and in its delusion. Israel, around 10 million population, wants to dominate a region of hundreds of millions of people, including by destroying the population of Palestinian Arabs in their midst, which equal the number of Israeli Jews, roughly speaking, at about 8 million people each. So this is Netanyahu's strategy, and every country that he calls a supporter of Palestine, therefore, needs to be overthrown. One of those was the Syrian government of Bashar al-Assad. And in 2011, at Netanyahu's behest, Obama and Hillary Clinton launched the overthrow of Bashar al-Assad. Well, as in so many of American CIA-led misadventures, that's a soft term for it, this was 14 years of bloodshed and war, which claimed hundreds of thousands of lives and destroyed much of Syria and much of the ancient Syria, which is a heritage of all of human civilization. Well, finally, the result was that after 14 years, Israel and the United States brought a jihadist government to power, and they think it's their puppet. And maybe for the moment, it is their puppet. This is hardly a stable, legitimate government, nor a peaceful government, because we know that there is mass violence, retributive murder underway, large parts of the Syrian population at a grave risk, and new violence could explode. But this is a puppet regime entirely. And so the words of Petraeus, who gets everything wrong all the time anyway, and the words of Netanyahu were completely aligned in the last 3 days about this wonderful new government that Israel and the United States installed in Syria, and how it's going to make peace with Israel and do all these wonderful things. Absolutely astounding. Remember, Petraeus is also the one who told us that in 2023, Ukraine's counteroffensive was going to drive Ukraine to the Sea of Azov, and Russia was going to be defeated, and all the rest. The man's a walking disaster. So you can have the rank of general and be wrong on everything. And he is in that class.
Well, it's just that when you can't do diplomacy anymore, you're incapable of even discussing what the security concerns of Russia, China, Iran might be without, labeling it near treason, even to discuss it. This is the situation of diplomacy. Meanwhile, we can sit down with the former leaders of Al-Qaeda because they're considered an instrument for finding military solutions. It's just, as the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, 80 years after the Second World War, an institution to find peaceful solutions in the world, it's very depressing to see that this is where we are. It's very hard to be optimistic about where the world is heading as well.
Let me just add a couple of points, if I might. The vast majority of speeches at the UN from all over the world were actually uplifting, calling for peace, calling for cooperation, calling for an effective United Nations. We're seeing a few countries hijack the international system. We're not seeing the end of the international system or its support all over the world. I sat through lots of speeches. I met with lots of leaders. The vast majority of the world does not behave like the United States and Israel and Germany and the UK. This is really important to understand. China shows a phenomenal responsibility compared to what we've been discussing in the past few minutes. And China talked about its commitments to climate safety, to environmental safety, something that Trump completely and fallaciously abandoned at the General Assembly, calling it the whole climate issue a total hoax and so forth, when we see environmental destruction all around us. The world is not losing its sense of the need for shared actions for peace and for other common interests to protect the oceans or to protect the common areas of our world. What it's seeing is that, unfortunately, the United States has completely lost its way, because in its delusion it tried to and tries to maintain its hegemony, which it no longer has, but it flails about trying to somehow defend its prerogatives and act as if it runs the show, which it doesn't do at all. But it uses military means for these purposes and makes the world very dangerous. So honestly, I didn't feel that it was a collapse of the United Nations. I felt more that it is a collapse of the United States. The quality of governance is appalling. Trump is an ignoramus. He's a fool. And you listen to him for 5 minutes and you know that he understands and knows nothing except nastiness. But you look at his whole team around him. This is a team of the most rank amateurism imaginable. Amateurism even dignifies it in a way. These are people just playing with words, playing with fire, playing games, making claims, changing them the next hour. It's a kind of incoherence. So what do I take away from all of this? Not to give up on the possibilities of peace and actual justice even, and an international order of the UN Charter, but actually to see if the vast majority of the world, which speaks in the UN General Assembly, can use its will, which outnumbers the United States vastly, to push the United States and these few much smaller European powers back into some sense of responsibility and away from their delusions of grandeur. So I don't think we should give up on this. I think what we heard was some extraordinarily weird rhetoric, mainly from the US and Israel, also from the UK, which never makes sense now because its delusions are even grander. Its empire was bigger and its delusions are even grander after losing that empire. But it's a few countries that are completely out of line with the spirit of the times, which is for peace and problem solving. And there was a lot of the latter expressed at the UN.
Well, I did watch those peaceful speeches as well, so I'm very grateful you were able to end this on a positive note, because we do need the United Nations. So and also thank you so much for taking the time, my friend, to speak with us. So very much appreciate it.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.